"Grandpa, you need to move out of the apartment," Mary announced from the doorway. "What do you mean, move out?" Grandpa Donald exclaimed, dropping his spoon as the borscht he never touched spilled onto his t-shirt. "I'll arrange for the movers," Mary said with a casual shrug. "They'll pack everything up, take it wherever you want, unload it, and set it up. Don't worry, I'll cover the moving expenses." "Move? Where?" Grandpa Donald's eyes widened in disbelief. "Oh, that's no big deal. You can think of a place yourself." Everyone knew Donald as a jeweler, but that wasn't because he took up the craft at 45. By then, he had 3 sons and 2 grandsons, with 2 more grandsons on the way. His friends all invite him. "You're a jeweler, Donald, and a fisherman, a hunter, a football fan. You've got heirs, assistants, but what about the girls? They just want money for shoes and lipstick. One minute they're here, and the next, they're off to get married. And then they forget all about you." His best friend, a father of 3 daughters, used to lament. Ironically, one of those daughters was married to Donald's own son. "I wouldn't mind having a daughter, though. They're a blessing for a man, a source of tenderness, love, beauty. If Sarah and I could, we'd have another daughter," Donald replied wistfully. On his 50th anniversary, his eldest son, Jack, playfully hugged him, saying, "Dad, don't you think you're a bit short on grandchildren?" "Nope, 5 is just right," Donald replied with a chuckle. "Are you planning to give me another boy?" "No, Dad, I don't want to." "Then why the questions?" "Well, Dad, you're about to have a granddaughter." "A granddaughter?" Donald's eyes sparkled, reminiscent of the day Sarah said yes. Mary was his only granddaughter, and he adored her. She loved visiting him, where he pampered her with intricate bracelets, unique earrings, or real rings, not the toy ones her kindergarten friends had. Mary took meticulous care of her treasures, earning her the playful title of Mistress of the Copper Mountain from her teachers, who noted her surprising maturity for her age. "Father, we know you loved your mother dearly, but you're still young. Don't give up on yourself. Everyone around you is noticing," his sons urged him, concerned for their 58-year-old father. "No, I prefer to help you with your kids. I'll spoil Mary too. She'll want to go to drama school." Grandpa Donald chuckled as 5-year-old Mary, a mirror image of her mother, began to perform plays, sing, and dance. Mary was well aware of her status as the sole princess in this house of men. She received the finest dresses, the best teachers, the most prestigious clubs. Everything was top-notch. She was the first in her class to get a smartphone, and a month later, she got a second one after successfully betting that she could drown the first one in a puddle. Grandpa didn't scold her, he just got her a new one. He also turned a blind eye when Mary decided to gift her precious jewelry from him to her friends. Many knew the true value of Donald's bracelets. Some that looked simple were worth over $1,000. "Grandpa, I had no idea these were worth so much," Mary shrugged. "You'll make me new earrings, right?" "Of course, Mary. Just don't give them away again, okay?" "Okay." Sometimes her friends would chastise her, claiming she was too spoiled. "She's a girl, a princess, and princesses deserve to be spoiled," Grandpa Donald would say with a grin behind his thick gray mustache. And Mary would beam her usual bright smile as she accepted yet another gift. "Oh, Grandpa, why did you buy this bag?" "I thought you'd like it. They said it was the latest fashion at the store." "Was that at the shopping center? The only noise they make there is from mice." "Want me to return it?" "Never mind, keep it. It looks chic." Mary graduated from school, leaving her teachers awestruck. The girl had a brilliant mind and absorbed knowledge effortlessly, but her strong-willed personality often made her come off as unapproachable. She effortlessly gained admission to university, attended classes with a laid-back attitude, and breezed through exams. While a swarm of boys pursued her, she dismissed them with disdain, mostly critiquing their appearances or social status. This one was a loser, that one was too skinny and another too heavy. But Stan caught her interest, not because of his looks, but because his father owned a business. They began dating in their second year. Mary's parents were opposed to the relationship, believing education should come first and love could wait. They wanted nothing to do with Stan. "Grandpa, can Stan and I come visit you?" Mary asked on the phone. "What kind of question is that?" "Of course you can," her grandfather replied warmly. "Then wait for us, we'll be there soon," Mary exclaimed excitedly. Mary and Stan didn't arrive empty-handed. They brought a nice bottle of wine, along with meat and vegetables. Grandpa Donald felt a bit embarrassed, but Stan insisted he wasn't one to show up without contributions. Plus, he had grilled the meat himself. Mary set the table, and they sat down for dinner together. "Stan, I have to ask you as a man to a man, do you really like Mary?" Grandpa Donald inquired. "Absolutely. I've never met anyone like her," Stan replied earnestly. "Never. Honestly, other girls can be naive at 18, but Mary, she's incredibly smart." "That's true. So what are your plans?" "We'll finish our studies and then get married." "Sounds perfect." After dinner, the young couple retreated to the living room, laughing and watching a movie. Mary emerged a couple of times, her cheeks flushed, to refill the tea. Grandpa Donald couldn't help but smile wistfully, thinking how soon his little bird would leave the nest. And indeed, it wasn't long before she did. A couple of weeks later, Mary arrived at her grandfather's with a grim face, dragging a suitcase and carrying a bag. "Grandpa, I've left home," she announced. "What happened?" he asked, concerned. "Mom is against my seeing Stan. So I decided, you won't kick me out, will you?" "Of course not. What are you talking about?" Grandpa replied, already dialing his son to express his displeasure. "Father, you shouldn't worry so much about her. She's all sunshine and sweet before you, but at home. We discussed this in the family and decided, if she doesn't want to adhere to our rules, she's free to go. After all, she's an adult now," his son said sharply, irritation lacing his voice. "But she's still just a child." "Father, you really don't know your child. I strongly suggest you let her go. If she craves independence, let her live with Stan." Despite his son's advice, Grandpa Donald couldn't bring himself to kick Mary out. Each morning, he made her breakfast and walked her to the university. Afterward, he worked on his jewelry for a couple of hours before strolling with Inga, his dacha neighbor. She was a bit younger than him and looked nothing like his late wife Sarah, but she was equally warm and caring. Inga found Donald to be a delightful companion. He was always available to lend a hand and was an engaging conversationalist. She admired his jewelry-making skills and even attempted to create her own talisman using jewelry wire. Donald was thrilled and offered her a set of tools. "Inga, I'm so glad you've taken an interest too. Would you like me to teach you?" he asked with enthusiasm. "Absolutely. It's incredible how fascinating things can be made from wire and stones," she replied, her eyes shining. "All right, here, it's better if you lead the wire this way, and make sure to hide the ends like this. Remember how to do it." Mary wrinkled her nose every time she caught sight of Inga at her grandfather's house. Inga could sense that the girl didn't like her. Trying to improve their relationship, Inga decided to give Mary a brooch. When Grandpa Donald saw the brooch, his jaw dropped in surprise. The student had truly surpassed the master. "Ew, it's just a piece of consumer junk. Didn't your grandfather ever show you what real craftsmanship looks like?" Mary scoffed, refusing to accept the gift. "On the contrary, he said it was quite an amazing piece," Inga responded calmly. "Well, why don't you wear this thing yourself?" Mary tossed the brooch onto the table dismissively. Inga felt hurt, but chose not to convey her feelings to Donald. Such matters could disturb him. He was frail enough as it was. She didn't want to risk his health. "Inga, I never thought I'd experience something like a boyish crush in my old age. You know I care for you, more than just liking you," Donald confessed. "Yes, I can tell by the way you look at me. Inga replied, her head down, feeling like a girl in love for the first time. Why not move in with me? I have a spacious 4-room apartment, though one room is for Mary. Donald, I have my own apartment too. Why not move in with me? Mary doesn't like me. No, don't say that. She's a sweet girl. She just hasn't gotten to know you well. At that moment, Mary burst in, her voice ringing out. Grandpa, great news. Stan is moving in with me. Mary, you won't believe it. I just asked Inga to move in with me, and I think she accepted, Donald said with excitement. Inga, Grandpa, why do you need this granny around? If she moves in here, you won't see me again. Mary was trying to sound firm, but her words were an empty threat. She had nowhere else to go but her grandfather's. Granddaughter, Inga is a wonderful woman. Being around her makes me feel young. Exactly. Next to her, you look less like a partner and more like a son. Why do you, such a handsome man, need a wilted old lady? Mary, Donald raised his voice for the first time. You will not speak about Inga like that. And what will you do about it? Mary shot back, narrowing her eyes. You know what this is about. I don't want to choose between you. There's something within me that is bursting to come out. Mary, call an ambulance right now. Inga exclaimed as Donald began to wobble and fall. Mary stood frozen, watching indifferently as this dark-eyed woman rushed to her grandfather's side. Feeling unaffected, she turned and took Stan's hand, leading him toward her room. A month later, Donald was discharged from the hospital, with Inga ever by his side. Donald, today's the day. Your son and I found a sanatorium for you. Once you're out, we'll grab our things and head to the sea. Jack will drive us to your place first, and then to the train station, Inga said cheerfully. That sounds wonderful. But what about Mary? Donald inquired, memory tugging at his heart. His beloved granddaughter had only visited him once and called twice to check on her bank card. Mary, she's living with Stan now. I haven't seen her since you were admitted, and she doesn't talk to her father either. I see you can't stop mentioning my son. Are you in love with him or something? Donald laughed. Father, what are you suggesting? Jack chimed in, walking into the room and sharing a laugh as well. Mom and I were so worried about you. She practically lived here. With Mom. Yeah, Dad, it's funny, but Inga looks so much like her that I accidentally called her Mom when you were in the hospital, and my brothers overheard. So whether you marry her or not, Inga will now be a mother figure to us. Inga blushed, while Donald laughed so hard that it triggered a twinge in his heart again. When they returned home, everything was still in disarray. The trash can stank, belongings were strewn everywhere, the curtains were drawn, and even Donald's room felt uncomfortable. Don't worry, she'll learn how to manage a household, Inga reassured him. I'm not so sure, Donald replied thoughtfully, his mind drifting back to Mary's cold, accusatory look when the ambulance took him away. Donald and Inga decided to marry right there in the resort town, planning to celebrate with family upon their return home. They arrived early in the morning to find everything unchanged, the lingering smell from the trash and the cluttered mess. Inga shook her head, quickly tidied up, prepared borscht, and steeled herself for an encounter with Mary, feeling uncertain. Next to Inga, Donald felt invigorated, eager to embrace life again and rediscover what it meant to be a man, not just a grandfather. Just then, he heard the key turning in the lock. Yes, everything will be fine. Grandpa will be back soon. It doesn't matter where he is, that's his problem. Yes, that's it. He'll do everything for his beloved granddaughter. Donald heard Mary muttering to herself. He winced as he heard her toss the ridiculous figurine that Sarah had given him off the shelf in the hallway. A plaintive chime echoed, followed by Mary's laughter. There, hear that? She's already begun. Mary walked into the kitchen and glanced at her grandfather, surprised that he had overheard her conversation. Quickly, she composed herself, plastered on a practiced smile, and began chattering. Grandpa, You need to move out of the apartment, Mary declared from the doorway. Move out? What do you mean? Grandpa Donald dropped his spoon, and the borscht that he hadn't even touched spilled messily onto his t-shirt. Don't worry, I'll call the movers. They'll take everything wherever you want, unload it, and set it up. I'll handle the costs, Mary replied casually. Moving? To where? He asked, bewildered. Oh, that's a minor detail. You just think about where you want to go, she said dismissively. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home, he asserted firmly. Grandpa, where are Stan and I supposed to live? A tear streamed down Mary's cheek. We're going to have a daughter. A daughter, Donald said hoarsely for reasons he couldn't quite explain. Mary, Stan is a grown man. He needs to take responsibility for you and your child. I can help financially after the baby arrives, but only for 6 months, no more. Now, pack your things. You have 3 hours. What do you mean, 3 hours? Mary stammered, her face flushing with shock. Just like that. You're practically a married woman. So go to your husband, or not your husband. I can give you the keys to the dacha. It's a good house, and you could live there comfortably, even down to -20 in winter. My wife will be coming to me in 3 hours. What wife? Mary asked, bewildered. But then it clicked. Inga, is it? What a witch. Did she charm you or something? Well, she wouldn't have taken you while you had a pregnant girlfriend. Mary's face burned. It was the first time her grandfather had been so stern with her. Sorrow filled the girl's eyes as she began to cry, sincerely for the first time in years, and not just to plead for new clothes. Mary, I love you very much. I'm sorry that instead of appreciating the love from me, your parents, aunts, uncles, and brothers, you respond with only resentment. It wasn't until I was in the hospital that I realized you see us not as family, but as a resource. If you're getting married, then marry him. If things are tough, we'll help, but until you learn to show us love, we can't see each other. Mary stood there, stunned by the forcefulness of her grandfather's words. She had never witnessed him so resolute and unwavering. Grandfather, but she started only for Donald to raise his hand to stop her. No, Mary, enough. I've turned a blind eye to your behavior for too long. It's time for you to grow up. Dropping her head, Mary felt lost for words for the first time in her life. Slowly, she walked out of the kitchen and headed to her room to pack her things. 3 hours later, when Inga arrived, Mary had already left. Donald sat in a chair, gazing at a photograph of little Mary. Donald, how are you doing? Inga asked softly as she sat beside him. It's hard, he admitted honestly, but there was no other choice. She needs to learn to stand on her own. Inga took his hand. You did the right thing. She'll come around. Just give her time. 6 months passed. Donald and Inga enjoyed a peaceful life together, but Mary was nowhere to be found. One evening, the phone rang. Donald picked it up and heard his granddaughter's quiet voice. Grandpa, can I come over? An hour later, Mary sat in the kitchen, nervously fidgeting with her cup of tea. She looked worn out, but something new glimmered in her eyes, understanding and remorse. Grandpa, I want to apologize for everything. You were right. I needed to grow up. Donald observed her closely. How do you feel about adult life? It's tough, Mary confessed honestly. Stan and I broke up. I'm working as a waitress now. But you know, for the first time, I feel like I'm truly living. Donald smiled and took his granddaughter's hand. I'm proud of you, Mary. You've taken the first step. Now the key is not to stop. I'll try, Grandpa. Mary nodded, hope crossing her face. Can I visit you sometimes? Of course, Donald replied warmly. Our home is always open to you. Inga, standing in the doorway, smiled. Perhaps one day they would all become a real family after all.